We always try to start talking when it kicks off, so that it's not just dead, awkward silence.
Right. This is so
Gen Z apparently can tell when people are old.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm Sean Rains,
Jim Woods.
and this is the Job Board Podcast. And today we've got Ron Poff with us. He is the Associate Professor of Practice at the College of
Pamplin College of Business. Yeah.
At Virginia Tech here
Very
in
good.
lovely Blacksburg.
It's a
Virginia.
mouthful.
It's a mouthful. I got it right when we practiced it and I messed it up. But that's story of my life. Anyway, Ron's here with us. We've worked with Ron in the past.
Long time
A
ago.
long time ago at the same company. Jim and I were exited from the company. Ron decided to leave.
He got out while the getting was good.
Right?
Yeah, I actually did 2 tours there.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we're just going to talk with Ron today about some of the transitions he's made and how he's made those transitions, why he's made those transitions, and it should be a good conversation. Excited. It's good to see you, Ron.
Yeah.
You too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've been missing each other, but I'm
Yes.
glad that we got
It's an
to see-
honor.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
it is.
Well,
It is.
don't get too excited about that. So, like Sean mentioned, you've been through a bunch of different changes, right? So not just organizational changes, but career changes.
Yeah.
Just to kick us off, briefly take us through, those changes, where you worked, what your title / role was at those
Right.
organizations, just to sort of get that breadth of where you've been and what you've done out there.
Absolutely. It started out, from a military standpoint way back when, right? And had the opportunity to go into logistics and supply chain, working during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and came out in college and had the opportunity to become a purchasing manager at age 20. And, I spent 18 years in supply chain. So from a buyer to a sourcing specialist to an assistant manager to an associate manager. I think, too, because of the military background and some overseas global experience, especially in this area, was you can travel overseas. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can go.
Yeah.
And so having a global background enabled me to, to work on different projects, at Tetra. And that, I think, actually helped to bolster my career. Went through talking about life changes, you go through a divorce. Right.
Yeah.
And so that
That's a
took
big
me,
change.
that was a big change. 3, a father of 3. And so in a lot of ways to kind of get out of the area, right.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to start a new life.
Yeah.
And so I went to Rubbermaid, taking my sourcing career, to Rubbermaid up in Winchester, Virginia. Great manufacturer, but they did a lot of outsourcing. And so, I look back and Tetra prepared me in those different roles, product development, traveling all over the world, to now go to a Fortune 100 company, and spent, a year and a half there. But I realized that transition, being a dad and trying to be a sourcing person at the same time, I had reversed my priorities, right? But in that, and I share that because while I was at Rubbermaid, you meet all kinds of suppliers, right?
Yeah.
And at that moment, I met a supplier based out of Cleveland, Ohio, and, relocated some products and relocated some business to them. And I'll never forget, we were at a summit, and I had been speaking about some different programs that suppliers could get involved with. And we went to the bathroom, right? You just think I'm just going to go to the bathroom. And standing next to me was the president of the company. And we're both going to the restroom. And he said, if you ever think you want to leave Rubbermaid, let me know. And I'm thinking, I really just want to go to the bathroom. That's my thing. But, he's like, I'm telling you, if you ever want to leave, let me know. And I was like, okay. So I went back, finished up the program, did our thing. And at the same time, Tetra was going through some changes, right? There had been an acquisition by Spectrum. And my old boss, Tom Schmidt, you all probably remember Tom.
I forgot all about Tom.
Good
Tom was
old,
great. One of my favorite trips, absolute favorite trip to China was with Tom.
With Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like a dad to me.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can talk about mentorship as we go, but
he
was a phenomenal mentor. Marine Corps guy. I was Navy. So
he didn't quite like you then.
Exactly. We didn't like each other.
But
being, he was a drill sergeant at Parris Island at some point in his career. And so that discipline and, paying attention to detail, I respected, and I think he did as well. So anyways, he wanted to retire. And so, the leadership at Tetra ended up calling me and saying, hey, would you like to come back? And I'm like, to Blacksburg? And come back home. And, Kevin Brenner, a good friend of ours, our president of Tetra. He said, I don't normally do this. And he says, I've never done it in my career. He said, but I'd like to hire you back. And I think partly because I didn't leave because of culture. I didn't leave because the company was bad. I didn't leave.
Right.
I left because I needed to get out of town.
Right. Well, I think there's something to be said on that about leaving on good terms, right? When you do make that choice to leave on good terms, not burn your bridges. We talked a lot about connections and relationships. That's part of it.
Yeah.
You never know where you're going to be. But sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, I think it's a great point. I think in business, especially if you're in a sourcing role, marketing, sales role, we're not only building business relationships when we're doing our negotiations, but we're building personal friendships in many, many cases.
You spend a lot of hours with these people. I mean, it's like they do become your family. I mean, you spend more time with them than you do with your family.
I was just going to say that. In fact, that was probably the reason why I'm divorced, right? And I spent more time at work than I did with my family. And obviously that was some soul searching and reflection. And so Tetra brings me back, right? And I actually take on Tom's role. Tom then reports to me, which was interesting. It was an amazing, humble, thoughtful situation for my former boss to now, be a team again, kind of thing. And I mentioned the president of that company from Cleveland because as soon as I got back in Blacksburg, it had been no more than about 11 days. I'm in my office, phone rings, I pick it up, and he goes, I told you. There was no hello, there was no how are you doing,
no bathroom,
no go to hell. It was, I told you if you left. And I thought, oh my God, And I said, Scott? And he goes, I told you. And so he actually called me every month. For about 12, 14 months. And it was interesting. He was watching the stock each and every day. And if you remember, if we go back in time, to 2006, 2007, our stock went from like $31 down to $15.
Oh yeah. I looked at those years. Yeah, the lean years.
The lean.
I like to say the stock was at an all-time high. And then I got canned, and it went in the toilet, literally the week later. So that's it had really nothing to do with me, but my ego says it.
The stock's been going
not to where it was.
Since you got let's go to these. Well, he and Scott kept saying, Ron, what do you? And what I liked about him, because again, here's another mentor that's entered my life, and he said, what do you want to do with your life? Like, where are you going to go? And I said, well, I'd like to own my own company one day. And I said, when I grow up, I'd like to be a CEO. He goes, sourcing people don't become CEOs. Just got to tell you right here, right now. Supply chain people just don't become CEOs. There's a few, but many of them don't. He goes, I'd like to offer you a sales and marketing role. And I'm thinking, dude, I work with those people all the time, right?
You work with me.
Like,
I don't want to be like him.
Well, internally, our sales and marketing people were phenomenal, right? Smart people. But I dealt with sales and marketing. As a buyer, a buyer, I'm on the other table. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to the dark side. But he was consistent and persistent with his message of, how's things going? Where are you going to be? And he just said, "Hey, I'd like to offer you a business development role." When the stock got to pennies, the message started to resonate.
Yeah.
And of course, it was big for me because I'd already done this once.
Right.
I was not leaving the area. My zip code was going to change the same. And I made sure that he understood that. As much as I loved Cleveland, it's a great area.
Yeah. I didn't realize you moved all the way to Cleveland.
Well, I didn't.
Oh,
I never did.
Oh, you meant the
No,
Yeah.
I traveled a lot to Cleveland,
Yeah, right.
but no, I never ever moved, and that was critical for me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't want to leave my sons. I didn't want to leave my mom. It was just an
The
important.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just didn't have the
Exactly, and I tell you, Cleveland's wonderful. Between May 15th and November 15th, it ain't so wonderful after.
I've
November
never been
15th.
wowed anywhere in Ohio. I'm just saying.
I actually love
There's some
Ohio.
parts of Ohio.
Yeah, especially the Ohio
Yeah,
State.
yeah.
The Ohio
Yeah.
State.
Yeah.
So I made the move, right? I left in 2008. I'll never forget my first day on the job was a Tuesday in early November of 2008. I worked the polls with another good friend of ours, Greg Valaca.
Oh yeah, Greg.
Worked the polls, and if you remember, that was the John McCain versus Barack Obama. So I worked the polls early in the morning, got in my car, drove to Cleveland, 6 hours.
Yeah.
Straight up 77. It's a nice, easy drive. And I got to Chagrin Falls, Ohio, and that evening watched, Barack Obama become president. And I say that because the next day was kind of an interesting start for me, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm being sworn in as
Yeah.
a sales and marketing person.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is, in sourcing, it's business development, right?
Right.
It's doing the due diligence, it's finding the right people, it's dancing, it's dating, and then let's sign a contract and get married, right?
Yeah.
Very similar in sales and marketing. It's just the reverse, right? Where you're going to find the clients and the customers. So I got into that role. I tell students today, and I'm very honest about this, for the first couple of years, it was kind of an imposter syndrome. Right. I mean, I studied business management. I was around some wonderful marketing people. I knew innovation. I loved innovation. That's what I did at Rubbermaid. But this is sales and marketing. And so hearing no bothered me a lot.
Yeah.
Cold calling, not really my thing.
Yeah.
Right. I'm used to calling the shots. Now I'm having to deliver the shots. And so I felt very naked. Totally naked.
Yeah.
Right?
What did you do? How did you deal with that? Because I think that's the hardest part about a career change like what you did. Because that's a big change.
It's a big change.
It's not like you're just changing seats at the table.
Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely have to change your mindset. You have to get used to things like hearing no and how do I get to yes and things like that. So,
Well, and I think the imposter syndromes, I mean, I dealt with that as well, right? Going from creative into marketing, I'm just like, this isn't what I trained for. This isn't what I was educated for. People have told me I can do it.
Yeah.
But can I?
Right.
Can I really do it? And when I'm in the room with a bunch of other very seasoned marketers who've been doing it their entire career, it trickles in the back of your head. It's like they know so much more than me.
Right.
I'm like so lacking compared to them. And I think the reality is we're probably harsher on ourselves, but that was always, and I think that's one of the reasons we're so hesitant to make big changes is because of fear of that, right?
That's right.
Because it's like, well, if I am an imposter, then that means I'm going to fail.
That's right.
And
what's our biggest fear is fear itself.
Right.
We don't want to fail.
Right.
Fear of failure. No, I think, and that, so I struggled with, I thought everyone's looking at me going, nepotism, right? He knew the president, he knew the brother,
right?
He's here just because of the family, but he knows nothing of what he's doing. But in reality, again, I was actually applying things that I enjoyed doing, getting to meet people, putting together new product development opportunities, looking at innovation. One of the first things I did was an acquisition, which is some of the things we did right at Tetra. But, to answer your question, Sean, so here I am naked. I feel ignorant in my role. And I said that then. I wasn't too proud. Like, hey, I need help, right? And so first thing I did was join the American Marketing Association. Why not? I can start to learn the vernacular, start to network with different people. I then joined, this is when I found my fraternity. So I Googled, right, marketing, education, sales, management. I found Pi Sigma Epsilon, which, maybe we'll get to, but changed my entire life, right? Totally changed my life. It's a co-ed fraternity. So men and women coming together at a collegiate level, but yet they also want professionals too, to help guide them and mentor and coach them. So there was that. And then I went back to school, right? Yeah. Here I am, 42 years old, father of 3, single dude. I mean, I could be out dating and having a good life, but I'm going to school, right?
While starting a new career.
Right? And so I go to that other university in Charlottesville, not to be named, but
because you work at the school. Right?
No, and also I always tell that story. You give credit when credit's due. They have an awesome continuing professional ed program at the University of Virginia. Yeah. And I did a graduate certificate in what was then known as e-marketing. Now we call it digital marketing. Yeah. And I share that because it gave me, I realized now I'm starting to put this foundational piece, right? I'm starting to put the skeleton on things that I really knew, but I just needed that confidence. Yeah. And let's be honest, marketing 20 years ago versus marketing then, 100%. It was in a total transformation.
Oh, yeah. It still kind of is.
And it still is.
Yeah. I think that's the part of marketing, though, right?
Yeah.
It's always sort of the front runner for transformation, right? Yeah. Like it is. Should be. Yeah. So, I think it's just, which makes it hard when we get old, right? Like you're in your 40s, you make a shift, and the technology that's changing constantly, it's a fearful place to be sometimes.
How do you stay? Well, and I think it taught me lifelong learning. I heard that, I heard it in the Navy. I heard it in my first part of my career. Lifelong learning. I'm thinking, I just want to get my degree and move on. When I learn, I've learned and move on. But in reality, lifelong learning. I plan to learn till I die, right, at 117. But so I went back to school, gave me the confidence. And then I realized, wow, let me go ahead and get my master's, right? So then I got my master's of science in marketing. And at the same time, I'm growing in my career. It was a big difference too. So let's put it in context. You go from a $500 million multi-division plant going to Rubbermaid, which was, a multi-billion dollar, to a $38 million family-run company, right?
Yeah.
But what that enabled, I was able to take the strategies and the tools and apply them in a smaller company and help to grow. Yeah. So it was an entire team. It wasn't just me, but an entire team. We put together a strategic plan. We transformed a family-owned mom and pop organization into a national, global brand that is still family-owned and 3 times the revenue, right, than it was, at that time. So, and again, thankfully along the way, good people, asking me to do good things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When did you, or what was the thing that helped you pass the imposter syndrome? Did you get past it eventually?
I don't know. I still have it to this day. And I think it helps to motivate me.
Interesting.
I think when you're the smartest person in the room, you better find another room.
Yeah.
And when if you look in the mirror and you're getting along,
you can't leave this room yet.
Yeah.
We're not done with you. So.
And I think too, if you're looking at, the guy that I brush my teeth and shave with every morning, I disagree with that dude every morning.
Yeah, me too.
I do. Yeah. And I think when I start agreeing with that dude in the mirror, we got problems. Right. Yeah. So I think we have to challenge ourselves.
Yeah. So you kind of harness that imposter syndrome as a driving force for you to keep up with the continued learning, to keep pushing yourself forward. So it wasn't like you were avoiding that feeling, or you didn't necessarily try to get comfortable with it. You're just kind of like, okay, this is something that I can repurpose. Instead of creating anxiety, it creates excitement for me.
It does. Yeah. I mean, in a kind of a wicked way, right?
Yeah.
I also think it humbles me, right? I think when we think we've conquered it all,
Yeah.
then what kind of ego is that?
Yeah.
You know, I do say, you know, there's humbleness, but you also have to have some sense of confidence, right? You got to have some self-belief.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to curl yourself up in a fetal position and you never get out of bed, right?
Right.
But I think, I think for me, I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to grow in that effort.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So from there.
Yeah. So then what made you go into education?
What made me go in? So, you know, I mentioned Pi Sigma Epsilon, PSE. So 2012, 2014, around that time, I joined the National Council. So I became a life member as a professional member. And I started attending regional conferences. You know, sometimes, you know, in fact, my very first one was at James Madison University in Harrisonburg. Went down to Charleston, South Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia. So you have these regionals in the fall, and then you have nationals in the spring. And you're looking at, you know, 50 to 60 different university chapters, right? And some of the biggest names are The Ohio State University, Miami of Ohio, University of Toledo, Michigan State, University of Georgia, Virginia Tech. And so now I'm around these students, 18 to 22 year old. I'm coaching and mentoring. I'm then judging the competitions, and I'm judging, you know, a marketing case study. I'm judging the way that they sell. I'm also learning at the same time. Yeah. So as we go through these competitions, they train the students, well, they're training the coaches, they're training the mentors. I'm also around other faculty, right? So every chapter has a faculty advisor. And so now I'm in this arena, and I'm thinking, I kind of like this, right? One of the product lines I had at Marball, this Cleveland-based company, was actually products that were sold into the university market. So I had a multiple touch points, right, in the university market. I was actually on a board of a fire safety for colleges and universities, kind of thing. So to fast forward, basically in 2017, the power of social media, there was a posting that said, you know, if you're in the Blacksburg area and you're retired, or if you're in the Blacksburg area and you're a business leader and you have time, we're looking for adjunct professors. And I thought, oh, I wonder if I could do that, you know? And so I'm thinking, wow, it's Virginia Tech, like imposter syndrome, no way. And I put in for it, and they asked me to come visit. Kind of a funny story. I put my suit on, right, for my interview. I'm going to go meet this legendary professor of practice. And the meeting was at 3:30, and I happened to bend over in the parking lot to pick something up, and I blew out my pants, right? But in my mind, I'm thinking, this is my only shot. I only get one chance, right? I can't reschedule this. Somebody will take my spot.
Right.
I showed up. Thankfully, the jacket covered up my blown out butthole, right? It's there. And so I get interviewed for my adjunct position.
It was blown out pants.
Big hole in my pants. Yes.
That's probably part of why you got the job. This guy's good under pressure.
Doing it, do the best I can.
Pants
So
was it you that who gave? We had a supplier in, and was it we had a supplier in, and their luggage got lost, or?
So no, so the story is Les Wilson and I went to Italy, and Les's luggage didn't make it, and so he wore my pants. The problem is I wore 38s and he wore 32s, right? Yeah. So in my belt he wrapped around several times, you know. For 4 days.
In Italy.
Yeah. Nonetheless. He didn't wear my underwear. I drew the line.
No, you do. I mean, I've let Les borrow mine. You made the right choice.
Did you? Probably a good idea.
So I guess with, you know, what was the key driver though? You know, you started an adjunct, right? So I'm assuming that was part-time.
It was. Right? It was part-time.
And then
2 to 3
classes. What was it that made you go, okay, done with corporate?
Yeah.
I'm going full-time into this. Because for me, I teach one class in the evenings, right? And it's just kind of for fun. Something that sort of keeps me in the field. And it also was one of those things where I was just like, I'm going to get burnt out at a certain point.
Sure.
Like I'm just going to get old and burnt out. And at this point, I wasn't even thinking about marketing. I was just purely creative. And I'm like, and you don't see a lot of 60-year-old creative directors. Like you just age out, right? Like it's not a young person's game. So maybe this is an outlet. And it was more of a trial. Mm-hmm. After an invitation, I'm like, well, if I'm going to figure out if I like it, this is kind of the way in.
Yep.
But I think it takes a lot to get out of corporate. Something that I think, nothing against education, but the corporate is like, I'm in the real world, mm-hmm. right? Like I'm doing this, I'm impacting, you can impact students, right? Which has a different level of impact versus impacting a company in the bottom line. And then typically too, you're paid better, right? So you're making some sacrifices, but the plus side of like influencing and sort of shaping the future of what's going on. And
no, it's a great question because I love and still to this day. I mean, I talked to the former president or the president of Marble. He's still the president, and I mean, I had a great time there. 12 years in sales and marketing. Did 3 different acquisitions. Part of the executive team. I was the youngest on the executive team, just like I was at Tetra. I was the youngest on the executive team at Tetra. And then to have the luxury of living in Blacksburg and not having to live in Ohio. So myself and the other vice president of sales didn't have to live there either. So the question becomes, why did I do it? I think, let me put it in context. So the role that I have and the role of an adjunct was professor of practice. Mm-hmm. So taking my career and then applying it to the curriculum, applying it to the classroom, and really kind of showing the students through experiential learning, mm-hmm. What does this theory look like, right? So in addition to case studies, we've got a real life person, him or her, mm-hmm. that has had a 15, 20, 25, 30-year career that has applied it, and they can share those stories. And so I did the adjunct role. It was interesting. I shared with the president what I wanted to do. I was concerned because I thought he was going to say no, and he was like, no, I love it. I absolutely love it because you're in higher ed. We've got contacts. We were doing some research with Virginia Tech on some other things on an engineering point of view. We had set up an internship program using 5 or 6 different schools, including Virginia Tech. And so he was all about it. He just said, find the right time. So I did it during lunch. Yeah. I had a class at 11:15. I had another class at 12:20. I was back in my office at the CRC by 1:30 every day. So I'd leave at 11, back at 1:30. And he, really, really liked it. It really wasn't until my second year. So I taught a first year class. It was all first year students. Same year, so it was the fall of 2017, and my son was a Hokie, a freshman. So Hokie dad actually in the classroom. So I think there was some of that emotional connection. Yeah. And then the second semester, I got to teach entrepreneurship. So I set up my own marketing agency back in 2016. I had set up another company that failed miserably back in the mid 2000s. But entrepreneurship and corporate entrepreneurship is what we did, right? Yeah, we did that. Yeah. And so I was able to do that. And I really started to find myself getting more connected to education because I could see the students with startups, but more importantly, with wanting to change, right? And get involved in innovation. And we all know through Skunk Works and innovation, design thinking, that's motivating. Right?
That's very motivating.
Very motivating. It's what keeps us alive.
It's probably one of the more exciting times we had at Spectrum, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to the Skunk Work days, and I think back to the lunch with Ted. Yeah, the TED Talks that we would listen to and then talk about. Yeah, those were great times, and It's funny, Derek Myers. I need to get hold of him because I think he wants to be on. He reached out to me, and that was he was part of all that. It was interesting, but
Yeah, I mean, new product development, taking innovation, and innovation a lot of times, we all think about as technical products. Innovation can be looking at
it could be anything.
a manufacturing line and making changes
Absolutely.
and making it more efficient. So I fell in love with that. And then they said, "Hey, we want you to come back," because that's always the thought too.
Right.
This guy, we're not sure we really like this guy. Let's just do a semester or two.
Yeah.
And see you later. Thanks for.
I can't imagine anybody not liking you.
Well, you never know, though, right?
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they asked me to come back. In the second year, the president was not quite as he's like, I'm not so sure. And as it turns out, they asked me to teach a third class. So I was teaching 3 in the fall of 18. But your question was what motivated me to do it? There was just something that clicked that said, I like being here. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Plus, in addition to teaching, in our role, we don't do research, but we do service. And what's that service? Career counseling, career coaching, faculty advising, working with industry partners, to take things and implement them. And that I was really enjoying that.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden there was a job opening. And I'll never forget my department head, Dr. Genwali, who turns out to be another mentor, right? Here's another mentor that's entered my life. And there was a job opening, and I thought in my head, I'm not quite ready for this yet. I'm 49. It's a little too early. I mean, this will be a great job when I'm 65, right? But let me just see what the process looks like. I mean, it's higher ed. They got these search committees and they search all over the world. And I thought, let me just see what it's like. And so I went through it 4 years ago, the summer of 19, and I got the call that said, the job's yours. And I went, oh, wow. Oh, no. Oh, what do I do? And to your point, when I looked at the starting salary versus what I was making, it's a third, 1/3.
Yeah.
And that was very concerning because I had hit in my life, I never thought I would make, and this, I'm not saying this in a braggadocious way at all, but to your point, in the corporate world, you do pretty well. And in sales, let's be honest, you do pretty well, right? You have targets and commissions and things like that. And so I had done well, but I also realized I was traveling 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And I was missing baseball games, and I'm missing plays, and I'm missing dates and first dates and proms and stuff like that, which is why I had moved back to Blacksburg to begin with. So now I had all this scope creep, and the things that I had prioritized, 5 to 10 years before were now becoming eliminated. And money is money, but life is much more important. And especially when you're doing something that you love. I loved what I was doing, right, at Marball, but I was loving it.
Well, and I think it's probably something all 3 of us have in common, where we've made a career shift and we took less money for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's probably all different reasons between all 3 of us. But I think after you hit a certain age, I think it is an age thing a little bit. As your perspective changes and what matters and what doesn't matter, the money you can live as long as it's a livable wage. You're fine, right? You might have to give up some things, but are you giving up things, but you're gaining somewhere else? And I don't think enough people put emphasis into that. And I've seen a lot of people that we've both worked with, or all 3 of us have worked with, that have chased the dollar and have been the most unhappy people I've seen in the industry.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
And it's kind of sad because then they get to a point where they're making really good money and then they have an opportunity that they really want to do, but they don't do it because it's less money.
Yeah.
And they can't walk backwards.
That's right.
So I think it's crucial for anybody that's looking at something. The money should probably be one of the last things you're looking at.
I think the key to your point is it a livable wage, and those high salaries
or high pressure.
Well, the cost is a lot higher than what you're getting paid typically.
Mm-hmm.
and it does. I've got a buddy that he calls wages fun tickets. This is you're doing this to pay for the things you like to do, and if all you're doing is collecting fun tickets and you're never spending your fun tickets, then why are you doing all this?
Yeah.
And
I agree. And I think, I came from very humble beginnings. I mean, my parents didn't graduate high school. They were blue collar people, hardworking people, and they both have done very, very well. But I grew up with nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And not that I want to go back to nothing, let's be honest. Right. But
right.
I also know that I can live and do well. So
yeah.
I had 2 cars. I don't need 2 cars. Right. I had a 2,400 square foot townhouse, 2-car garage. I didn't need that, especially after I sell 1 car, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was able to get the boys through college.
Yeah.
All 3 graduated. I paid a year. Their mama paid a year, and they were responsible for the other 2, right?
Right.
Accountability and ownership in it, kind of thing. And so, but they had graduated. So the time in my life, I'll just never forget, though, when I called my financial advisor. He says, "You're doing what?
Yeah.
And you're going to be paid how much? Is that for 1 semester? Is that that's the academic year?
Yeah.
But I would do it infinite times.
Yeah.
Over. Infinite times over. I've been now 4 years. I've been lucky enough now that I'm the assistant department head. So growing in a new career and a new opportunity. Humbled every day to walk on that campus, to walk into Pamplin, to go into my office, to spend time with people that I would have never, ever imagined working with.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's wonderful, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about the money.
Yeah.
It's not about
But I will say, in the back of my head periodically, after taking the job, it was less money. I'm like, should I have done that?
Yeah.
Right. Like there's always a little sense of self-doubt. And when he changed jobs, I was, it's just like, I was just explaining it to him. Like it's always in my head. But how's that any different from when I was making more, when this wasn't the issue, and then I'm just comparing myself to somebody else or what the rest of the industry is making, or like the money thing always is in your head, regardless, I feel like. And,
there'll be people that are going to listen to this and go, "Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Money is everything."
Yes.
Right.
And that might be how they are.
Right.
That might be what's their.
Well, at a certain point in my life, it kind of was. Right?
Sure.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I just think I got to the point where it still matters, but I'm not living and dying by it. And I think I've seen enough people. I think the biggest transformation for me was seeing what I was describing before, with people that just job hop chasing the money and were miserable.
Yeah.
2 to 3 divorces, don't speak to their children don't speak to them.
Yes.
But they've got 4 cars and they live in an 8,000 square foot. Oh, that's wonderful.
Got a lot of money and nothing to do with it. That's what's turned into what I would say is my biggest fear is not doing the things that are going to bring me joy. Like that, the things that when I reflect on my life, I was like, okay, I'm glad I did that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know many people that are on their deathbed and like, well, I wish I had, a couple more thousand in my savings account.
Yeah.
Well, if they're sleeping on the street, they might say that.
But,
dying on the
I don't know. They're dying. I mean,
it's an extreme.
I'd like my health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then on the mentorship side of things, you brought it up a lot. So it seems like that had a big play in all of these changes. So talk us through that a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I share that with the students now, is that I have a number of mentors, right? I mean, I have a mentor for my professional daily life. That mentor is not someone I'm going to ask about my dating life, right? Don't really trust them in that category, right? And vice versa. The person that I go for my dating advice, I do not want to give me advice on my career, right? But I think where I'm going with this is I think it helps to have someone with an objective viewpoint. I think a lot of times mentors should not be family members. As a matter of fact, a lot of times when we coach students, it's, sure, mom and dad and grandma and grandpa can be great mentors, but are they the right mentors?
Very biased.
They're very biased. They're looking at it, sometimes from their point of view, knowing what they think is best for you as a person. But yeah, I mean, I think it's finding the right people. I mean, my mom may not have been a mentor, but was certainly a champion, right? Someone that I reached out to and certainly helped coach me in many, many different ways. Kicked me in my rear when I needed to be kicked in my rear, kind of thing. But I think it's finding people that believe in you, that want to invest in you, that they see something in you, and then remind you of who you are and what you're about, and help to define who you want to be. I mean, for Scott Baylog, right, the president of Marlball, to say, supply chain people don't become chief executive officers. That's a pretty bold statement when I'm climbing the ladder of supply chain, right? And obviously he wanted me to come there to do sales and marketing, but had he not seen that and asked that, I may not be sitting here now. I probably wouldn't be at Virginia Tech. It would have been a path that I wouldn't have taken. And then for my current mentor to say, you can be an assistant department head. I don't have my PhD, right? I haven't been in higher ed. That doesn't matter. I want you to be that. I want you to do that.
That's awesome.
And so just taking that investment. I think the other thing that I've felt this way my entire life, because I couldn't really change my life, right? Yeah. And then I mention it to the students today, is just be you. Mm-hmm. Be who you want to be. We talked about it again. Money. Why did I chase money? Because the neighbors had it. Why did I chase money? Because that's what I see on Instagram. Why did I? No, just be you. Just be yourself. I mean, I said imposter syndrome. I said, that's just who I am, right?
I
accept it.
I think that's awesome. I mean, absolutely, because I think that's what can happen too. And unfortunately, I think it takes like a midlife crisis to realize that you can lose yourself. Mm-hmm. And we talked a little bit about it in the last podcast about like being intentional about your goals and thinking about your goals and thinking about them often.
And resetting them when they need to be reset.
Yeah, and
not be afraid to reset them.
Yeah. Because
lose the ego.
Absolutely. Well, they're your goals.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you today was for us, our goal resets were forced upon us.
Yes.
In a sense, right? Like we wouldn't have made the decisions we made if we were gainfully employed at the time, right? And it really forced us. You took the bull by the horns. You had a completely different approach, right? Like you were chasing your own goals. You were sort of setting things up. You were sort of following some paths and continuously going. And I think, there's two avenues there. Obviously, our perspective is very different than yours. So it was really interesting.
And I sort of mentioned earlier about continuous learning, lifelong learning, continuous improvement, continuous commitment, right? So just this summer, I took a course at the University of Michigan, right? Leading through diversity, equity and inclusion.
I think you're just trying to get T-shirts
of
all the shirts
University of Michigan.
Walk on the tech campus to get
UVA
things thrown at you.
No, I think it's again, I still feel like I'm a guest on campus, and I say that repeatedly. I mean, I'm a corporate person. I'm an industry person. I'm still trying to figure out how to spell VT, right? In many, many ways. And I'm still trying to understand and navigate higher ed, which I think actually drives me to the drill field every day, right? Because I'm learning something every day. But it's that, again, I want to continuously improve. I want to continuously change and invest in the career kind of thing. Plus, I also think some of the topics and some of the things that we need to do is understand where this generation, the 18 to 35, right? I mean, I have 3 sons, 27, and then the buy one, get one free moment. So the twins at 24, what are they thinking? Why did they think that way?
Yeah. No, that's something we've talked about too, about having, is having students that are either newly graduated and going into their career or have started their career there maybe 1 or 2 years, and what was like some of their big like oof
aha moments.
moments.
Yep.
So to kind of round this out, I personally, I don't know if you had any other questions.
No, we're at time. So yeah.
I guess what I would ask Ron, first, thanks for coming on.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
You know, I've always been loved having you in my corner, and working with you and knowing you and being friends with you has been great. So really glad you could come on. But what is one last piece of advice you would give someone who is either facing a career change that has been forced on them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I'm still on LinkedIn quite a bit, and I'm seeing a lot of open to work banners going up and not coming down. Right. So I think it's a weird time, or someone who is sitting and listening or watching right now, and they're thinking about making a brave choice like you've made. Mm-hmm. What's one last bit of advice you would give?
I think it's, I think some of the things that you're doing and that we all do is network, never forget, who you worked with, worked for, team. Teamwork is teamwork. Well, right. Teamwork can last for a long
that's
time.
Great. I like that. Yeah.
Part of things. I think the other part that that Jim talked about, I think, is true. Is don't be afraid to take the initiative. Right. Yeah. The best way to mitigate fear and the best way to eliminate fear is just take initiative and jump into it.
Yeah.
You can always say no. No one's got a stopwatch that they're always going to remember. So if you get into something 6 months later and go, hey, I don't think I like this,
right?
Either be persistent and give it another 6 months, or just step away and go back, right, and reset. There's nothing wrong with pivoting in life.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think it's I think the other part is you try to get creative in some different things. So I was a sourcing person that became a marketing person, right? And I think so many times we find ourselves in that corner and we don't realize that there's 4 corners in a room. So go find a new corner, right, to play and be a part of. And because there's resources to learn, there's resources to train. And then I think, lastly, and hopefully it doesn't sound too cliche-ish, but just believe in yourself of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Believe in who you are and believe that you can do other things, right?
Yeah.
Take the chance.
Awesome.
Well, thanks,
Ron. Yeah, thank you
so much.
Yeah.
So glad you could come
30 minutes goes by fast.
Yeah. It's been 45.
Yeah. 45.
Yes.
Okay.
As the thing goes on here. That's
great.
So great.
Awesome. All right. Well,
thanks, brother.
Thanks, Ron.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.